Hello there. These are the stories we are tracking for you right at this time. President Bola Tinubu approves Southeast Investment Company to boost industrialization. Federal government Press orders push climate-smart innovations to improve livestock productivity. Japan's core inflation rate eases to 3.3% in June 2025. Well, let's take a dive into our commodity space and see what is playing out. What's the playbook looking like this afternoon? Well, gold, silver is in green, copper on that same line, but platinum is on the other side, but not selling too badly. $1,464.48 is what an ounce of that commodity is going for. But let's start from gold, which is $3,354.30, positive 9.00, and it's 0.27% in percentage points in positive. That's in green. For silver, it is 0.88% in green, selling at $38.64 an ounce, and positive 0.34. Copper is 554.75. That's $554.75, positive 3.50, while it's in green 0.63%. Only platinum is looking the other way, 0.14 in negative. But the price, like I said earlier, is not looking too bad. $1,464.48 per metric ton of that commodity. While for corn, wheat, cocoa, and cotton, corn 1.25% in positive plus 5.25, and it's $426.25. Wheat $537.50, also positive 0.75%, while it's positive here for 4.00 and 5.25 on this side. Now, cocoa is $7,309. That is, this selling price is not looking too good for this Friday afternoon. Well, the back and forth, of course, around the commodity space is hitting hard on cocoa, though it's doing positive when you look at the percentage points. But looking at this, it is not doing well at all, I must say. For cotton, is $68.91, and it's a 0.11%. And for cotton, is down 0.16%. Well, let's take a dive to global markets and see what the market is looking like this afternoon. Asian shares tracked Wall Street higher today as United States economic data and corporate earnings offset tariff worries. Now, MSCI's broadest index of Asian Pacific shares outside of Japan rose 0.8%. That's the first here in green. It's higher since late 2021, bringing the weekly gain to 1.7% as Japan's Nikkei slipped 0.2%. Down in red. The yen was about 148.54 per dollar, down about 0.7% this week, after polls showed Prime Minister Shigre Siba's coalition was in danger of losing its majority in the election on Sunday. Well, Chinese blue chips rose 0.3%, well, that's CSI 300. Hong Kong Hang Seng gained 1.2%. That market is also staying in green. Now, the Taipei listed shares of TSMC, the world's main producer of advanced AI chip, rallied 2.2%. We had that report yesterday showing the performance of TSMC's stock and, selling of AI chips in that market. It's been doing pretty well because it's now needed in almost all facets of that economy. But let's go to crude oil prices now, where extended gains are today underpinned by supply concerns following drone attacks on northern Iraqi oil fields and tight market fundamentals. Amid healthy summer demands, U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude is positive, selling at $67.84, 0.44% in positive. Brent crude futures sells for $69.82, 0.43% in positive, and Bonny Light sells for $78.62 per barrel, with a downward direction of 2.84%. And for the OPEC basket, dealers offer $69.93 per barrel. That is also down 0.53%. Well, we have two very important conversations we'll be having today. We'll speak around inflation. Of course, the figures came out on Wednesday, and there's been a series of breakdowns around that. But before we get to speaking around inflation, which would also do a bit of breakdown to see the details and the fundamentals surrounding the figures, we will tell you that the extension of the implementation of the capital component of the 2024 federal budget by the executive with legislative approval until the end of 2025 is a move that echoes a troubling pattern in Nigeria's fiscal management. With this, the 2025 budget will now run concurrently with the 2024 budget, raising the likelihood that parts of the 2025 budget may also dovetail into 2026. Now, such overlapping of fiscal years does not bode well for transparency, accountability, or timely delivery of public projects. Budgets are meant to be executed within a set time frame, ensuring that projects are completed as scheduled and that government spending delivers its intended benefits. However, Nigeria's persistent struggle with delayed budget implementation is rooted in a chronic tendency to overestimate revenues. For example, the 2025 budget is predicated on an oil benchmark of $75 per barrel, yet actual prices have remained below this mark for most of the past 6 months, save for brief spikes during the Israel-Iran conflict. Well, you will agree with me that this is indeed very topical, and my guest is Viola Kwaga. He is the Group Head Research and Policy Advisory, Open Government and Institutional Partnership Budget. He joins me live from Abuja via Zoom for this conversation. Mr. Kwaga, good afternoon, and thank you for joining me on the show today.
Good afternoon, Tolu. A pleasure to be here as always, although you have not invited me to your new office in Lagos yet.
You know, I told you, you are well invited here. I will expect to see you soon, but you're now more of Abuja. But let's see how that plays out. Very quickly, I'm sure you listened to my introduction, and I think we should start by understanding better what a budget really is and what it entails in its totality before we get deep into this conversation.
Thank you so much for that question. I think it's important for listeners to be aware of the function of a budget and what it really is for us to delve deeper into the troubling situation that's happening at Nigeria's federal level. So a budget is essentially a statement, a plan on how much an entity aims to spend and how much it intends to earn for a particular fiscal period. It is a document that is backed by legislation, which means that it has the coercive power of the state to enforce. A budget, speaking from a governmental perspective, is a document that speaks to the government's intentions and the government's plans for its spending regarding security, education, health, water and sanitation, and economic growth. It is a document that is meant to be held closely by not just citizens, but even the business community, so they can know where the budget, where the government intends to spend money, and that can signal to them where they may or may not decide to make investments. It's important that we realize that a budget is meant to be linked to a medium-term plan. In Nigeria's case, our budget is linked to our medium-term expenditure framework and medium-term sector strategies. Now, these documents are essentially articulations of Nigeria's 3-year projection regarding how much it may or may not earn, how much it may or may not spend, and the macroeconomic context, both domestic and global, that will affect the operation and implementation of government policy. Lastly, this medium-term expenditure framework and annual budgets are meant to be tied to a long-term plan. The long-term plan is an articulation or an expression of how the government intends to move society or move the country from a lower suboptimal position to a much better, more optimal position where there is growth, where there is progress, where there is transition from low-level activity to higher-level activity. I'm afraid that at the moment, it does not appear like this idea is being followed, like this format is being followed. And over the course of our conversation, I'll probably speak to a few issues touching on this subject.
Yes, indeed. I would go straight to ask you what really is the implication, what does it mean? What does it mean running a budget concurrently, on proper implementation? Like you said, we have a supplementary budget running, and now it's 2024 budget is going to run till the end of 2025. Then when do we start to run 2025's budget?
So the implications are numerous. I think they are a demonstration that the federal government, through its ministries, departments, and agencies, has simply not been providing enough information for Nigerians. Now, there is meant to be reporting on the daily spending of government MDAs on the government's own open treasury portal. I have to remind your listeners that this was an initiative of the Buhari administration, the late Buhari administration, and it was very effective in providing detailed information. Now, I mean, to be fair, the site had its challenges. There were often dead links. Some reports were not complete, but by and large, there was a significant amount of detailed information that citizens and businesses could use. I'm afraid to say that from the beginning of this year, that portal has not been updated with any new spending information. So the government is essentially even violating its own established practices and procedures. And what we have is simply the projects of a previous administration being simply abandoned or discontinued by a new administration. May I also point out that the budget implementation reports since Q2 2024 have not been published. So we have not seen Q3 2024 budget implementation reports. We have not seen Q4 2024 budget implementation reports. We have not seen Q1 2025 and Q2 2025. So essentially, in a manner of speaking, we have not seen budget implementation reports for an entire fiscal year. And I think this is highly inappropriate for a country that wants to attract investments. This will really send a poor signal to the private sector, both domestic and international. I will say that the implications of this concurrent budgets, which at the moment are technically going to be 3, because it has been reported by the budget office that the 2025 budget would come into effect in August of 2025. So we still have components from the 2024 full year budget, the 2024 supplementary budget, and then we will have the 2025 budget. Now, for reporting, that will mean that the Accountant General's office, the accounting departments of various MDAs will have a serious challenge in how they report their information, because it is still unclear whether or not, they will have to officially close the 2024 fiscal year before the commencement of spending, for the 2025 fiscal year. Looking at the macro implications, my very good friend, Dr. Paul Alaje, has quipped that he suspects that this will even lead to an increase in the money supply, which many of us know has a strong correlation with inflation. And because we operate a system where the government is generally the main driver of the economy, this will mean serious supply of money into the economy as at when the 2025 budget commences. Yes, it is true that the government, through the budget office, has stated that they are still making payments to some contractors for the 2024 main budget. It is not clear if they are still doing the same for the 2024 supplementary component. And it really speaks to a problem around reporting and the organization of reporting by MDAs of the government. It also speaks to the inability of the National Assembly to properly oversight the MDAs, because we have finance committees, we have public accounts committees of both the House and the Senate, and it's interesting to know what type of exchanges have run between the National Assembly, which is the constitutional body empowered to summon anyone and to request any documents relating to the finances of this country. It's really, really interesting to know what type of exchanges have been made between the National Assembly and the federal government regarding the implementation of public policy, because the budget is a demonstration of the direction of public policy. That means there are likely significant gaps. That means that not only has these several budgets taken us away from the projections raised in the medium-term expenditure framework of late 2024, it has also deviated us. And I think this is the most significant and impactful impact of these concurrent budgets. It has taken us away from the targets in the medium-term plan as put up by the Buhari administration. I would like to end by saying, as of today, there hasn't been anything put in place that I'm aware of by this administration for a long-term plan. We are still using the 2021 to 2025 medium-term plan put up by the Buhari administration. And we call on this administration to seriously consider the urgency needed to put up a new long-term plan, a new medium-term plan for Nigerians to really look at and interrogate.
Almost finally, of course, you just touched on the past administration where we used to have a January to December budget cycle. If you look at the basic things that we have now, what we have on ground, it seems that has been altered one way or the other. What does that also mean? And of course, you've touched on fiscal indiscipline and of course, public finance framework for the country. Now, the issue of resources also comes in. Some say the challenge of resources could be why we have this process on the ground. That's what we're facing at the moment, running budgets concurrently.
Yes, I mean, that's a tenable argument. We also have to acknowledge that between 2023 and now, the Naira has lost almost 80% of its value. We had 2 depreciation exercises moving from around 400 Naira to, I think, 700, and then from around 800 to 1,500. And if you put this in context of inflation as well, you will see that the Naira has truly lost significant value. In fact, our own analysis shows that in real terms, the 2025 budget is around the size of the 2023 budget, which was around 25, 27, 28 billion US dollars. So we are actually not spending as much as we should. Again, my organization, and many other well-meaning Nigerians has been very, very objective in stating that we are not even spending as much as we should. Yes, the 54 trillion Naira budget is the largest Nigeria has ever seen, but it is grossly inadequate, even if you look at our sub-Saharan African peer governments that spend twice what we spend with populations 1/3 of our size. So I will concede that the macros are not looking very good. I will even commend this administration for the tax bills that are a phenomenal improvement to our revenue system. But this must be looked into in context of what we have and how well we've been managing what we have. I'm sure you're aware that we tend to overshoot or overestimate the capital expenditure component of our budgets, and we always underestimate our revenue projections. So when you look at budget management in that light, you will see that the government needs to do far more than it is doing and has much less room to make excuses. How well has the government demonstrated through its reporting by the Auditor General, through its reporting by the Budget Office, through reporting from the Accountant General, that these scarce resources are being utilized in the most efficient and effective ways possible? What we're hearing in the form of, anecdotal claims is that contractors are complaining. And this is not my words. These are the words of the senators who debated the extension of the 2025 fiscal year on the floor of the Senate and the House. I know that Senator Dixon and Senator Abdullahi Bayelsa and Kebbi made a strong case as to why Nigerians are beginning to lose faith in the ability of this government to keep its fiscal house in order. So I will end by saying, yes, this government has had significant economic challenges, but it needs to demonstrate, for the purposes of legitimacy to its people, that it is handling its resources with probity, with transparency, with accountability, efficiency, and effectiveness, and is generally doing the best it can with what it has.
All right, now, before I let you go, what will be your candid advice down to the FG if you're in position to advise? Of course, your organization talks about all of this, breaks this down time after time. What would you have to say as we continue to grapple with the likes of inflation and, of course, all other challenges?
I mean, I would say that there needs to be a whole lot more reporting. Nigerians need to know our fiscal position. I would also say that debt management needs to be far more transparent. It needs to be far more accountable. I would plead with the National Assembly to exercise its oversight function far more rigorously. Nigerians need to see value from money, and the National Assembly is the only constitutionally empowered body to do so. I would also plead with this current administration to implement and perhaps even make law the implementation of the previous administration's national monitoring and evaluation framework that would require MDAs to report in specific ways and require this data to be used by the Federal Executive Council. One reason why we spend money poorly, I think, is because we do not collect the right type of data. And that data is not often used for policy formulation, let alone policy implementation. And, finally, I would end by saying that the responsibility to provide this information, even if the books don't look good, is a testament to the government's transparency that will go a long way to showing international investors and even domestic investors that the government is honest, that the government is open, and that the government is willing to take lessons from where it may have made mistakes. Civil society is always ready to collaborate with the federal government on this. And, like you said, our reports are there for all to see.
Viola Kwaga, it's been a while, and always having you is always an interesting one. Group Head, Research and Policy Advisory, Open Government and Institutional Partnership at Budget Foundation. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
You too, Tolu. Thank you so much for having me, as always.
All right, great stuff there. Well, still to come on the show, Nigeria's inflation rate declines third consecutive month to 22.22%. In the month of June, I have the head of research at Ankoria Assets Management, Ms. Oreoluwa Odetunde. Well, after this break, we will get to that conversation.